I believe we've seen CICCIOTT play against these similar Miraidon teams in the past, and I think this team has a lot of tools despite Miraidon being an excellent Pokemon in this matchup. It does have a lot that it has to navigate here between Rillaboom getting rid of its terrain, potentially Iron Jugulis switching in and out to get that Quark Drive speed boost with or without booster energy, also rocking the Terra Ground, so it could be a potential annoyance to any Miraidon in the field. We've seen Urshifu from Dubious's side be a pretty key Pokemon in this matchup, just being able to take advantage of the rain and just get off really good damage with Surging Strikes. But it looks like we are going to be hopping right into the game here. We have Dubious on the top side here and going up against CICCIOTT in the bottom. So we're going to see how these players are going to approach this matchup. And yeah, we'll have to see who is going to be moving on to the top 4.
Yeah, and I mean, I think you explained the matchup very well. There's a lot of different tools. Even though Miraidon at a face value looks like it can do a lot of work here, it's going to have to get through a lot of the other pieces here on the bottom left-hand side, whether that be the Terra Ground on the Iron Jugulis or something like the Terra Grass on the Kyogre. Even Rillaboom in and of itself being able to reset that terrain and with Fake Out can kind of make its way through this team, and being a Spore immunity is great into the Amoonguss. Otherwise, things like the Calyrex Ice Rider could be very, very strong into a team like this. More strong, honestly, than the Miraidon. The Miraidon kind of forces the pieces there on Pertina's side to then be weakened or be weakness to the Calyrex Ice Rider. So it's kind of an interesting matchup here, and I'm really curious to see how both of the players are going to play it out. If it's anything like some of the games that we saw from yesterday, Iron Jugulis is going to be a key piece in this matchup, being able to set up that Tailwind. But instead, we see our Rillaboom Calyrex Ice Rider lead here from our bottom left, and from Dubious and Incineroar and our Urshifu lead.
Yeah, what's interesting about this matchup is you can kind of play it 2 different ways, right? You can play the Iron Jugulis mode. You can try to get your Tailwind up and try to do some stuff with Kyogre, maybe try to set up a Basculegion in the back. But there's also this potential mode here, which I think Dubious has led pretty well into. You lead the Incineroar into the Rillaboom and Calyrex, getting the Intimidate off on both of them. Urshifu, also another great Pokemon to have here, is a little bit threatened by the Rillaboom, going to be a little less threatened by the Intimidate here being on the Rillaboom. So potentially CICCIOTT wanting to play this game a little bit slower pace, knowing that potentially Dubious going to try to go on the offensive with the Miraidon mode here, but really great leads into stopping this Calyrex Ice Rider from doing stuff really early on, because those never melt ice. Glacial Lance is going to be hitting for a ton of damage as Surging Strikes, no fake outs coming out from either side in this turn 1, as the Wood Hammer, the Intimidate paying off super, like a huge amount here, as the Urshifu able to tank the Wood Hammer at -1 and able to still be on the field after a turn of Leech Seed recovery, but just a lot of damage being exchanged by both sides.
And I was really interested, if that was your play to go for the Wood Hammer, you know that Urshifu most likely is going to live at the -1, even with terrain. So not following up with a Glacial Lance there to not only go neutral with your Calyrex Ice, but to get rid of this Urshifu is a bit of an interesting choice here from this player. Maybe they want to keep Urshifu in and maybe get Leech Seeded this next turn if something wants to swap in for that slot. But kind of letting the Urshifu get to live another turn is very dangerous now, because something like Close Combat, just sacrificing the Urshifu, could be a move of choice. But instead, we see the Miraidon come in for the Urshifu, choosing to preserve that little bit of HP as a U-turn to reset the terrain, knowing that maybe the Miraidon would come in. A full double pivot here from our bottom left-hand corner, as Dubious makes a pivot of their own, switching out Incineroar into a different Pokemon here. Maybe they were thinking of going back into the Urshifu if they were to give away with it, but now they're kind of reconsidering, I think, maybe into a different slot.
Yeah, it feels really awkward here if you're CICCIOTT to bring in Basculegion this early into the game, is because, like, you don't have any KOs on your side. You do have the Swift Swim speed advantage, so you do have the ability to fire off some strong water type attacks if you really want to. But yeah, bringing in Basculegion this early does not feel good at all. And now Dubious has the Miraidon and Calyrex Ice Rider, so you kind of have to pick your poison here, what you want to go for. You want to try to Terrastallize your Kyogre. If you want to switch out, you're going to be potentially switching into a Glacial Lance. Like, it's a very, very tough spot for CICCIOTT at this point, being able to have these Pokemon in and having to sort of reconcile the facts, like, okay, do we want Miraidon to pick up KOs here, or do we want to enable the Calyrex to pick up KOs here? So very interesting turn coming up, and we're going to have to see how CICCIOTT is going to have to maneuver out of this situation.
Yeah, it's a tough spot to be in, and just like that, I'm back like I never left. How's everybody doing?
as we're going to see the Calyrex now switch in for the Kyogre, as Basculegion going to remain on the field, just going to go for Protect to try and shield itself from a knockout here, potentially trying to save it for later in the game. We'll have to see if Calyrex just barely able to hang on with the Glacial Lance, not giving the opposing Calyrex a boost. But now if you're CICCIOTT, you're still in a situation where you're going to have to let something go down in order to reposition yourself in a better spot. But if you want to bring in Rillaboom to reset that terrain, you're going to be switching into a Glacial Lance, and that's never a fun time if you're a grass type like Rillaboom. But Miraidon also in a very good spot to pick up a KO with Electro Drift if it really wants to, with this Calyrex being so low. And Calyrex on the opposing side, if one of these Pokemon just is able to be on the field with just a sliver of its HP left, you're going to be giving it a boost. So just a very tough spot for CICCIOTT, and it's going to be really hard to pivot out of the impressive attack power of these two restricted Pokemon. That's the Aqua Jet, going to do a lot of damage to the Miraidon now that it has Terastallized out of its Dragon typing, as the opposing CICCIOTT's Calyrex having the speed advantage, so very important speed interaction to note there. Getting off some huge damage there with Glacial Lance, unfortunately missing the KO on the no longer Dragon-type Miraidon, as Dubious's Calyrex is going to pick up that special that attack boost from knocking out CICCIOTT's Calyrex.
I think this is one of those things where matchups like this is why the Iron Jugulus is actually really so important, because you just don't have enough pressure here, as we do see Urshifu opt to switch in here trying to win the terrain war, which is validly so, just because we're no longer going to get these leftover terrain recovery for these water spouts. And of course Instant comes in with a free fake out here and can honestly just go for Glacial Lance, and there's really not much you can really even do about it. Woodhammer does decent amount of damage, but with that -1 does nothing. Rillaboom goes down here. Kyogre takes a ton of damage, and really just great positioning here. And unfortunately, the speed just not in your favor.
Yeah, just a very unfortunate positional situation there from CICCIOTT. Going to drop game 1 there. Dubious very much winning the positioning war here. And it just goes to show in games like this and formats like this, having the Pokemon advantage, objectively in every situation is sometimes, in every situation is usually the best situation that you can be in here, because you just have the pieces to move around. Not only are you having more Pokemon to do stuff with, but you have the ability to pivot your Pokemon in and out. And I feel like Calyrex Ice on CICCIOTT's side was such a pivotal piece to try and win this game or win this matchup. And it just took so much damage turn 1, and it just forced the Basculegion to come out early, and it forced Kyogre to come out early. And then once you have Miraidon and Calyrex Ice on the field, well, your two defensive pivots into both of those restricteds, or your two defensive game plans, become compromised, right? Because if you Terastallize the Kyogre into a grass type, you're making yourself susceptible to Calyrex. But if you don't Terastallize it, you're making it susceptible to an Electro Drift. And if you want to switch any of your Pokemon in and out, well, you have Pokemon that's weak to Glacial Lance, and you have Pokemon that's weak to Electro Drift in the back. So just very, very weird position there, which is going to cost CICCIOTT the game. But going to slightly switch up the game plan here from Dubious's end. Going to lead the Miraidon Urshifu this time into the Rillaboom and Calyrex.
Yeah, interesting that we just already see the terrain war being lost, and you have great positioning here just because you do have a Rillaboom versus an Urshifu. Calyrex, you could go for a double tap here, but you really don't have enough damage to pick up, and it's at the expense of your Urshifu. I think this is just an easy repositioning here. The question is what's in the back, because if it is, of course, Kyogre, do you bring the last respects? I think normally Iron Drug is good here, but I don't think it was brought, so maybe this is potentially a Smeargle. But we do see just Surging Strikes go into the Calyrex. Does a good amount of damage, but really offset by the fact there is going to be a lot of leftovers or cups. We do see Glacial Lance opting to just do a little bit of damage here. Significant damage, but really, I don't know if that was a trade you necessarily wanted, even though your Rillaboom's still in a good position to just switch and adjust, but you're going to have to eat another Surging Strikes for your troubles. And depending on what comes out here, Glacial Lance, you're still going to take some heavy chip damage if Kyogre comes in, so you're not going to get full power Water Spout. So honestly, really neutral turn at that.
Yeah, we saw this kind of be a problem in the first game. CICCIOTT's Calyrex taking that much damage, and that Surging Strikes without the rain doing almost 50%. So you can only imagine how much damage it's going to do if Kyogre is coming in here. Now, you think Kyogre on paper would be an okay Pokemon to bring in here because, oh yeah, I resist water, I resist ice. But the problem is that Urshifu and Calyrex are strong Pokemon. So, you're going to be taking a hefty hit for your troubles as CICCIOTT doing no switching here, just instead going to attack into the Urshifu's Protect and just try to get the Leech Seed on the opposing Calyrex to try to get some sort of HP recovery, get itself in a much better position to start taking attacks. maybe wanting to bring that Kyogre in at some point. Urshifu possibly recognizing that it's now in threat of Grassy Glide, so I would not be surprised to see an Incineroar come in at some point, judging by how good of a matchup it has both into these two Pokemon. CICCIOTT, recognizing that, might be thinking in the back of their mind that Kyogre is potentially a Pokemon that you can bring in here at some point. But no, instead we're going to see Basculegion come in as going to take a Surging Strikes to the face. Going to be doing a lot of damage. Basculegion, a very, very feral Pokemon.
Yeah, we do see the Woodcammer come out here, but honestly, I don't know if that trade was necessarily worth it. Glacial Lantern, your Basculegion just took a ton of damage. Sure, you get a little bit of recovery because of the grassy terrain, and of course with the Leech Seed, but I don't know if that was necessarily the best trade, because now you've confirmed lost the terrain war already. This is something you want to kind of keep Miraidon in check, but unfortunately you've kind of lost that already. I don't know if it was truly worth it. The Leech Seed is great, but I'm just kind of thinking like, okay, what's potentially next? Calyrex, cool, it's taking a lot of damage, so you're not really worried about that. Kyogre, what's it really gonna do here? There's a Miraidon in the back, so I don't know if that necessarily trade is going to work out in your favor. It just seems like right now, to me, there's not enough potential damage versus what the damage you're going to have to take.
Yeah, with Basculegion being at such low HP and also only 1 KO, I don't know if base 100 power Lash Respects is going to be enough to threaten too much. And we're kind of finding ourselves in a very similar situation as to Game 1, where we have both Restricteds, Miraidon and Calyrex Ice Rider on the field. So you have that electric and ice coverage that this team just does not love switching into at all. So you're in a position where you're going to have to compromise one aspect of your defenses here to try to survive the turn. And I think if you're CICCIOTT, you're probably, your biggest enemy here is going to be that Calyrex Ice Rider, because if you're able to Terra Grass the Kyogre in front of Miraidon, it suddenly becomes a lot less scary. But just going on the defensive here for the turn one, just going to see what the Miraidon is going to lock itself into. It's going to be that Draco Meteor, just going to cover for the Terra option there, as Basculegion going to take the benefits of the Leech Seed left behind by Calyrex, just trying to get a little bit of HP recovery, maybe allowing it to survive a little bit longer if it doesn't have to take an electric attack. But now with these Pokemon burning their Protects, it's time to go on the offensive, and we're going to have to see how CICCIOTT is going to make the most of their offensive pressure here to try to deal with these two restricted Pokemon.
Yeah, this is kind of an interesting little spot you want to do it. The leftovers, well, not the leftovers, the Leech Seed, excuse me, that recovery is slowly kind of helping you out. You may not have enough for Last Respects, but Wave Crash might be an option here, but you're just not, I don't know if that will pick up here, even though you are under rain here. And this is the one thing about these teams, right? The Miraidon makes it so difficult, and before we even get to see what happens, that's an easy cleanup there. You do Hydro Pump, you do make a trade, but honestly, that trade not necessarily too bad, because seeing Amoonguss in the back, all of a sudden this changed rather quickly.
Yeah, the Amoonguss being in the back, now the Miraidon being locked in a Draco Meteor, locked at -2 special attack. Kyogre not even needing to go for its Terastallization there, as both sides saving their Terastallization, not even needing it. But yeah, Miraidon with Amoonguss in the last 2 slots, not a whole lot of offense to close out the game, and Dubious recognizing that, going to click the forfeit button. So yeah, a very interesting turn of events to end the game there. What eventually turned into another awkward position for CICCIOTT, it ends up working out as the sacrifice to Basculegion. Also, very important speed interaction to notice there. Scarf Miraidon is faster than the Basculegion in rain with its Swift Swim ability. So another reason for Basculegion to potentially be a little scared if it decides to come in at the wrong time against that Miraidon. So going into this game 3, I'm curious to see what kind of adjustments we'll see from both sides, as I think both sides need to reevaluate their game plans to account for the more than likely adjustments coming out from both players.
Yeah, it's really interesting to see this, because this is end up turning into almost like a balance versus balance in just different, like just a different mask, but that's how the teams are playing out. Even though you see a Basculegion, you see an Iron Jugglist, and all these other pieces like Smeargle, we're opting to just play more, okay, let's go bar for bar, let's do positioning, instead of trying to maybe potentially go a more defensive oriented route, or offensive oriented route, just choosing, no, I can go tit for tat. I just have to make sure I put things in the right position. The Leech Seed has been incredibly valuable here. The Terrain War, immediately, like, you're in a really good position. If you can get this Urshifu off the board quicker than before, I think you're in a really a great position, because I don't know if necessarily losing Rillaboom early is great for you here, but Calyrex, honestly, you're in an okay position. You know, do have the leftovers recovery. You can set up potential lead seed right now, just knowing you have incoming damage coming in. So honestly, not a bad lead seeing right on Urshifu. It just depends on how you want to play your Rillaboom here.
Yeah, it is a awkward lead for sure into Rillaboom because not only you're giving up the terrain advantage, but you're also putting your Urshifu Rapid Strike in a position where it could just be knocked out, faked out by the Rillaboom, and that could enable the Calyrex to do some stuff here, like set up Trick Room or just get a free hit off with Glacial Lance. As we're going to see a double switch turn 1 going into the Incineroar and Calyrex here. A very good switch in here because not only you get the Intimidate down on Calyrex, you switch in 2 resistances to Glacial Lance, and you're able to burn the fake out from Rillaboom's side. So all of a sudden, Dubious in a very similar situation to where they have fake out live, they have Glacial Lance live, they have Trick Room live. They have a lot of different things they can go for here, but yeah, I mean, the Incineroar doesn't even have to click fake out in this situation, recognizing that CICCIOTT probably going to have to make a defensive positional play here to try to get themselves out of range of anything this Calyrex is willing to do. So very solid turn 1 play, almost like the Miraidon Urshifu lead is a bait for CICCIOTT to potentially think that they have a free attack into the opposing slots, but instead letting a very solid pivot come out as the pivoting this turn begins as Rillaboom U-turns out to Kyogre.
Yeah, we do see U-turn for U-turn here as Incineroar takes back in, hits the field as Miraidon comes in, and really nice lead seed, but we do see Trick Room go up. So kind of, not gonna lie, this is what I expected mostly on the turn 1. And double switch coming in, it's just an interesting play where I think it was pretty fair just to know that you potentially have damage incoming. So I thought lead seed would be the turn 1, instead just opting for Glacial Lance, and you didn't really lose too much of it. You do get Kyogre onto Trick Room here, but you don't have any way to like neutralize the damage output of the Calyrex, so you really are kind of on a timer to get the maximum output from the Kyogre here. I mean, because what can you switch in? You can't switch in Basculegion, you can't switch in Jug, you can't switch in Rillaboom, you can't switch in Smeargle, so you're kind of forced to stay here and try to get maximum output while you can.
Yeah, and this is sort of the board state that the CICCIOTT's team likes to play for in the slower sort of Trick Room mind game or end games, is that you try to set up this board position where you have the Never Melt Ice, Glacial Lance, plus the Water Spout. Unfortunately, the Water Spout going to be a little bit weaker now that Kyogre has taken over half of its HP, but this is the board state that you're playing for because there's not pretty much any combination of Pokemon in this format that wants to stand up to Water Spout plus Glacial Lance, and showing right there how Miraidon is basically just pinned there by the Glacial Lance. Even Intimidated just takes it all the way down to where Water Spout, even in a weakened state, can knock it out. So Dubious has got a lot of work to do to maneuver themselves out of Trick Room, but importantly, Miraidon is now down. So if CICCIOTT does have that Basculegion in the back, I mean, once a Pokemon or 2 goes down, that Basculegion is in a prime position to start picking up KOs left and right once it's able to enter the field, once Trick Room is finally stalled out.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is kind of an interesting spot. The lead seed's starting to slowly but surely kind of like do its thing. I think if you're CICCIOTT, you probably want to set up one of your own just because you just really need a little bit of healing so you can keep being able to apply some pressure here and not go down. We do see Kyogre go for the Protect. Honestly, it makes sense. And we do see Glacial Lance comes out here. Now, the question is, what does the... And Incineroar go for? Went for the knockoff. So getting a free lead seed here, just like kind of anticipated here. So now we're going to just trade. I take HP, you take HP. I take HP, you take HP. The one difference is one's -2, the other one is straight at neutral, just hanging out. So Kyogre gets to live another turn here, but you can't really switch out either, and so you're gonna have to eat a knockoff and Glacial Lance again, and Calyrex not gonna be able to do much. I mean, you could set up a double lead seed here, go into Incineroar. I think that's probably the max value you can get here, but I think Kyogre has pretty much run its course unless you're willing to sack something off here.
Yeah, it's a bit of an awkward position for sure because I do believe the Incineroar underspeeds the Kyogre, so it will be faster in Trick Room. So you're gonna have to take a Glacial Lance, gonna have to take a knockoff, and with that item still on it, yeah, that's easily a knockout into Kyogre. But CICCIOTT, noticing that the double up was needed to take out the Kyogre here, able to bring in Basculegion. The only issue here is now that the Rain is going to be expiring at the same time as Trick Room, so Basculegion not able to take advantage of the Swift Swim boost, which possibly may come into play against the Urshifu in the back, but I mean, against an Incineroar and a Calyrex, not really needing the speed advantage here. But now, if with an active fake out, you do have the opportunity to get a hit off with this Basculegion, even in Trick Room. So CICCIOTT maneuvering themselves in a great position here. And Basket Legion looking like it's putting itself into a good position to start firing off some huge damage here. And the support from Rillaboom is going to be really nice in dealing with that Urshifu in the back, despite Basket Legion most likely being slower than it.
Yeah, and I think one of the other things that's really great about this setup right now is Basket Legion is going to constantly keep getting some Grassy Terrain recovery along with Leech Seed recovery as well. And then Rillaboom can go ahead and just like, honestly, just kind of hang out here. And Urshifu does come in, but if that potentially is going to be a Wood Hammer, which is not, it was a fake out and send it to the Incineroar. We do see Last Respects come out, not able to pick up the KO, but gets pretty close. And now a nice little turn of Grassy Terrain recovery for everybody, but the Urshifu is still kind of in danger. You're really not doing too much here, and Calyrex really isn't wanting to take on this Basket Legion at all. So the question is, how do you get it off the field? Do you do enough damage? Rillaboom sitting right there. Incineroar is going last out of everyone here, so targeting is super important in this turn, and this could be the game-winning decisions right here.
Yeah, CICCIOTT actually making a very, very nice read there, calling the Incineroar to Terrastalize and going for Last Respects, which just does a ton of damage. Also, not going for Wave Crash to save its HP, so it is able to keep getting recovery. But with the Incineroar now burning the Terrastalization, you now have no more resists to Last Respects. And now with base 100, yeah, that thing is going to be hitting for a ton of damage here. And with the support from Rillaboom, yeah, you do get the Incineroar back in with the Intimidate, but it's such a low HP that honestly, like even with the -1, it is still very much in danger of being knocked out here. But and Urshifu is facing its uphill battle of its own, just having surging strikes into a number of resistances here. But CICCIOTT just going to switch out the Rillaboom, bring in the Calyrex as the close combat goes into Calyrex, very critically lowering the HP or lowering the defenses on the Urshifu side, just making it a much easier target for both of these Pokemon to pick up in the end game. And now in this situation, you have a Fake Out, you have a Basket Legion, you have an Urshifu that can't really do anything into both of these mon. CICCIOTT taking game number 2, and that is going to put us to a game 3.
Yeah, like this has just been a very, or I want to say masterclass of like putting Basket Legion in the perfect positions to get maximum output, making sure Last Respects is a perfect fight. Miraidon going down way earlier in the game was actually such a beautiful thing to happen, because you don't have to worry about, oh, I can get outsped and KO'd. I don't have to worry about terrain. Like, just having that is such a sigh of relief, and then you can just pivot just here and there a little bit, and it came in right at the end and was able to do what it did. Once you preserved Rillaboom for the Urshifu, it was kind of just like, oh, okay, this is just a matter of time. As long as I don't make any mistakes myself, then I should be okay. And that's exactly what we got to see there.
Yeah, and my mistake, actually, that was game 3. So that was a GG's for CICCIOTT there. The number 1 seed taking this set in a very, very close fashion there, as